Welcome to another edition of Green is Good. This is the Houlihan Lokey edition of Green is Good, and we're broadcasting live from the 10th Annual Industrial Conference, and the guy who put it together is with us himself, Scott Sargent. Scott's the Managing Director of Houlihan Lokey. Welcome today to Green is Good, Scott.
Thank you, John, and thank you for giving me credit for this great event, but this is our whole firm puts this together every year, and I've got a great group of 75 investment bankers in our industrials group who all contribute to putting this great event together.
They're all great people, but I know Scott the best, and Scott's my point of contact at Houlihan Lokey, so to me, this is Scott's event anyway, and Scott has been so kind and asked us to come speak at these events, and this year he invited Green is Good to come and interview some of the great speakers and other folks that have come and enjoyed this amazing event. We're very appreciative of that, Scott. It's been just a delight to be here, and some of the speakers you've had have amazing brands.
Yeah, we every year we try to carve out at least one track of presenters. This year we had over 50 presenters across a whole variety of different industrial subsectors. But because the environmental services is such a big practice for us, we have at least a track full of high quality public and private environmental services companies.
That's great. And for our listeners and our audience out there that wants to learn more about Scott and his colleagues, what they're doing in Houlihan Lokey, please go to www.hl.com. www.hl.com. You can learn about all the services that Houlihan Lokey does. Scott, this is the 10th Annual Industrial Conference. Talk a little bit about the evolution, how you started it and why you started it originally, and how it's evolved and how it's now one of the premier, if not the #1 industrials conference in the world.
Well, the reason why we think it's the best industrial conference is because it's very unique in that we have both public companies and private companies. It's not just a public company institutional shareholder investor conference where we link up investors with public companies. This is a conference where we try to bring up all constituents, all potential stakeholders and businesses for just a massive networking event. And so what's really fun is we bring opportunities to companies that could be future lenders, acquirers, other types of investors, or they could be target companies that those businesses want to buy at some point. And we also, a lot of great new partnerships come about, alliances, and it's just a great way for people to get their brands above the radar and networking to create better businesses. So for investors that want to meet and hear good entrepreneurs doing really neat things, this is where they've got to come. And for entrepreneurs that want to get their story out, is this also where they've got to platform them? Is that sort of the platform that you've created here? Yeah, so this year we'll see how many folks. We were expecting at least 600 to 700 attendees today, throughout the course of the day. And like I said, 50 plus industrial presenting companies. Wow. So of those attendees, it's a cross between corporate executives, right, business owners, private equity sponsors, hedge funds, lenders, other transaction intermediaries. So it's a pretty diverse group of attendees. And so anybody who's interested in meeting any of these companies or just generally networking with any of those folks who are generally interested across all of these different industrial sectors, this is the place to be. Thanks to you, and I really mean thanks to you, Scott. Green is Good was allowed in today to interview and meet some of the great speakers and leaders that come to share their stories here. We had organics on Green is Good, and River Road Waste, and RWL Water, and so many great brands. Can you share some of your highlights from today's amazing conference and some of the brands that were here and some of the things that you got to see and got to help facilitate that really make you proud of today's great event? So we had 4 great public companies: US Ecology, Waste Connections, Progressive Waste, Great Lakes Dredge and Dock. These are 4 of the bigger brands of publicly traded environmental services companies. The environmental services industry is depending on how you measure it, a $200 billion, $500 billion industry. there aren't that many billion-dollar plus companies, and there actually are a lot of pure, like publicly traded companies. We got a good chunk of them presenting here today.
It's a good point.
Plus 4 great environmental services businesses, electronic recyclers. At the top of the list, organics recycling, as you mentioned, which is a leading food recycling business. A company called North Star Services that does a variety of environmental remediation, deconstruction, decontamination services across both commercial and industrial subsectors. They've got a leading brand as well. So we have just a really nice mix. But my highlight of the day is basically setting up one-on-one meetings for all of our main guests, the presenting companies and other attendees. We try to match them up in the setting of what we call one-on-one meetings. So we look at our roster of attendees and we try to do some matchmaking of, again, trying to match people with buyers and sellers and investors and potential targets and just general strategic alliances. And just being able to sit in on some of these and be a fly on the wall and hear how corporate executives are thinking about growing their businesses is really the highlight for me.
Gotcha. And then how many potential investors and other type of strategics come to meet all these great brands and speakers that are here? How wide a net are you casting for the investor population?
We invite our client base, which is pretty deep.
Right.
The financial sponsor community and all their portfolio companies and all the corporate executives that are part of our industry coverage. We had, I think, somewhere of 1,200 people register for the event, and obviously not everybody makes it. But,
right.
We expect at least 600-700 people of those to show up.
For our listeners who just joined us and our audience that just joined us, we've got Scott Sargent. He's the managing director of Houlihan Lokey. This is the Houlihan Lokey special edition of Green is Good. And then to learn more about Houlihan Lokey or to hire them to help you in some banking need that you have, please go to www.hl.com. Scott, there's a lot of people in our audience, both in the United States and around the world, that aren't familiar with Houlihan Lokey. Share a little bit about how big and deep your company is, not only nationally, but internationally, and what kind of services do you provide in the banking community?
So we're a full-service investment bank, and we're a global firm. So we've got 8 offices across the U.S. We have several offices across Asia and Europe, Australia now. So we're, again, full-service investment bank. We are purely an advisory firm. So we're not a bank that underwrites securities and that lends money ourselves, right? We don't have necessarily a balance sheet. We act as a financial advisor to raise capital, equity, debt, or to match buyers and sellers. So we have the leading M&A practice in the country. We do more M&A deals than anybody else under you name a metric, 100 million, 500 million, $1 billion, $2 billion in transactions. We are usually the number 1, 2, or 3 in terms of overall number of transaction volume. We also have one of the leading practices in raising capital for our clients. Again, both debt and equity capital for a whole variety of reasons. We also have a very large opinion and valuation practice. So we provide valuations for really any conceivable kind of situation, whether it's transaction related or non-transaction related. We can go into a whole bunch of reasons why you need those. And then we also have the leading financial restructuring practice. So if a company or a creditor was an unfortunate circumstance where there needed to be, there's some financial distress, we act as an advisor to either side of either the creditor or the debtor in helping them figure out how to negotiate a resolution to fix the balance sheet of those companies. And then lastly, we do have a consulting practice where we basically do strategic advisory to help do studies and other research for firms who are trying to help, basically starting to build business plans and want third-party research around their industries. That's a relatively new practice for ours as well. That's very complementary to all 3 of those investment banking practices.
And your specialty specifically is in the environmental services platform?
Yes, so that's is the area that I live and breathe on a daily basis. About 4 or 5 years ago, we started our environmental services practice. And I've been with the firm for 14 years and specialized in M&A really, and just doing deals across a whole variety of sectors. And then over time, it started to had done a handful of environmental related transactions, and decided that this was an unbanked area. It was one that's extremely fragmented and one that's really target rich in the middle market, which is our focus as a firm. And so and it was an area that I developed a passion for personally, because you get to work with some great companies that are helping other companies stay environmentally compliant, and just do the right thing. So it's a feel-good industry too. So all those things combined, we did a lot of work around, how we could build a practice that was successful, that was going to really keep us busy. And so that was about 4 or 5 years ago, and we've done about 24 environmental services related transactions over the last 3 years.
Wow!
And so we think we've got very nice market leadership there.
And so your environmental services practice now has become one of the biggest environmental services banking practices in the United States, if not the world.
That's what we think. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So look, there's a lot of deals get done. It's a highly fragmented space, but we're very proud to say that we've been associated with a lot of the higher profile transactions in the space with a lot of the market leaders.
The social trends that are going on with the millennial generation and the generation coming in behind them, being really on fire for sustainability, that has to bode well for your banking environmental services practice, in terms of sustainability is here to stay, and there's going to be more and more companies growing up and needing banking services to service society's needs in terms of, as you said, food recycling, electronic recycling, textile recycling, and just straight waste and other recycling verticals.
There's a lot of macro trends, right, that support these businesses. Regulation has always been a big supporter, right? Regulation continues to pile on year over year,
right?
And you never necessarily know when the next regulation is coming. It's not highly predictable, but you can guarantee that it's never going to reverse itself.
Good point.
Right, it's never going to get more lax. So you have, that's a very nice contributor, a catalyst for growth, but also a nice barrier to entry.
That's a great point.
So I think there's, but at the same time, even though companies aren't, in cases where they're not forced to do the right thing, companies are increasingly feel compelled to do the right thing, and really focus on environmental stewardship, because it is good business. And people aren't necessarily going to make decisions that are not economical for them, but they're certainly going to try to do the right thing and find a way to make money doing it. So that I think that overall increased focus on sustainability and environmental stewardship is a huge tailwind in the industry, supporting all these companies. And another area is just businesses that have figured out ways to keep identify waste or garbage or whatever, and really not call it waste anymore, right? To find ways to keep it out of a landfill, which is what everybody wants to do, and identify those waste streams, and then convert them into something valuable, right? And not necessarily not putting it in a landfill and calling it a day. They are identifying that material, and it may be at the end of its useful current life, but then there's another life for it somewhere else. And then be able to make money on that product in the back end.
Wow,
and there's so many businesses that fit that category. The e-waste is obviously one massive, very large market, but like the food waste and used motor oil, used cooking oil, used tires.
It's amazing.
There's a lot of subsectors out there, and really smart people that are creating these businesses and building scale out of them.
Scott, hopefully we were invited back for the 11th annual Industrials Conference. Give me a little visibility on what you're hoping is growing is going to grow in the next year or so. What other areas have you not touched on that you're excited to maybe explore or go after in terms of banking opportunities?
Well, I think that there's a whole host of professional services out there too.
Okay.
So businesses that are helping companies deal with their waste streams, or to advising them in terms of how to become focused on sustainability.
Oh, interesting.
Issues. So whether they're analyzing their waste streams, or finding, helping them find a home for their waste streams, or helping them deal with the increased burden of compliance in general, whether it's safety related, environmental related, just being able to comply with all these complex regulations out there. The Clean Air Act, it's the most complicated of all regulations out there related to the environment. There's still, I think, an untapped market out there. It's a very highly fragmented area. We haven't done a lot on the upstream professional services. Done some. I think there's one area that we'd love to do more. And I think that'd be one. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we hope to come back next year, and we thank you again for this year's invitation. For all our audience members out there, this has been the Houlihan Lokey special edition of Green is Good. And of course, we have Mr. Houlihan Lokey with him ourselves right now, Scott Sargent. He's the managing director at Houlihan Lokey. And to find Houlihan Lokey online and to hire them to help you in your banking needs, please go to www.hl.com. Scott, you are a sustainability superstar, and you make the world a better place every day. And thank you for all you do. You're truly living proof that green is good. Thank you again for everything.
Thank you, John.